The president gave a speech today, and there's a couple of pieces of it that I'd like to share with you that I think are particularly important. The first is he's calling out the Republicans. Let us not forget that back in 2009, January 2009, the night that President Obama was inaugurated, when he was sworn into office, that night he and his wife and Joe Biden and his wife were out dancing, with the stars, as it were, in all these balls all around Washington, D.C. And Paul Ryan, Eric Cantor, Kevin McCarthy, Pete Sessions, Jeb Hensarling, Pete Hoekstra, Dan Lundgren, Jim DeMint, John Kyle, Tom Coburn, John Ensign, and Bob Corker were meeting at a restaurant here in Washington, D.C. to plot the destruction of the Obama presidency at the Caucus Room restaurant in a private room, along with Frank Luntz and Newt Gingrich, who has discussed it with me on this program. Newt Gingrich has said, yeah, that's what you do. If you're going to take out the opposition, that's why it's called the opposition. You take them out. So these guys got together to take down the Obama presidency. And, they have been working aggressively to harm the economy by blocking everything the president's been trying to do. And their compatriots, their Republican compatriots in the states all around the United States, the 50 states, or at least the ones that are run by Republicans, have been quite successful in knocking several 100,000 people out of work. So it's like the Republicans, from it's over 700,000 jobs that have been lost at the state level. The sequester, we're looking at losing maybe 800,000, and in fact, he's talking about even 900,000 being lost next year, just next year, 900,000 jobs. So this is the paragraph that starts with worse, right, Shano? Yeah. So here's the president speaking about these policies. If they're trying to shut down the government, they're trying to shut down Obamacare, they're trying to do everything they can to defeat everything, and they're basically what the Republicans are doing and have been doing for 5 years now, is make the American people hurt so bad that they will start noticing how much it hurts, and then Republicans run around, and they're particularly good at doing this on Fox News, and yell, it's all the president's fault. Here's President Obama on this.
And these moves don't just hurt our economy in the long term, they hurt our middle class right now. The Independent Congressional Budget Office estimates that the cuts that are being made right now in Washington will cost our economy 750,000 jobs this year, 900,000 fewer jobs next year. And a lot of the jobs at risk are at small businesses that contract with our military or our federal agencies. Over the past 4 years, another 700,000 workers at the federal, state, and local levels of government have lost their jobs. These are cops and firefighters. And about half of them are people who work in our schools. Those are real jobs. It doesn't help a company like Amazon when a teacher or a cop or a firefighter loses their job. They don't have money to place an order. That's hundreds of thousands of customers who have less money to spend. If those layoffs had not happened, if public sector employees grew like they did the past 2 recessions, the unemployment rate would be 6.5 instead of 7.5. Our economy would be much better off, and the deficit would still be going down because we'd be getting more tax revenue.
So, very simple. He just lays it out. I mean, I would have liked him to every other sentence say, because of Republicans, because of Republican policies, because of Republican intransigence, because of the Republican conspiracy to destroy my presidency, whatever. I mean, I would have liked him to have pointed it out a little more literally or specifically or explicitly, but I think, and that's frankly, I think is, for the entire 5 years of his presidency has been one of the messaging challenges that the Obama administration has had, is that he has tried so hard to look to the average American as somebody who is willing to work with the other side, as somebody who is post-partisan. He's tried so hard to be reasonable that a lot of people are starting to believe the lie. You throw enough stuff against the wall and some of it sticks. They're starting to believe the lies that are being spread, that this bad economy is a consequence of decisions that this president and the Democratic Party made, when in fact it is the exact opposite. This economy is in large part the consequence of policy decisions that were made in the name of Reaganomics. 32 years of Reaganomics has hollowed out the core of this country. Free trade has hollowed out the industrial core of this country. We're being wiped out. And we're still living in a Reaganomics world. You know, the top tax rate is still below 50%. You want to put an end to Reaganomics, you got to roll back the Reagan tax cuts, and nobody's talking about that, except me. You got to roll back the Reagan tax cuts. You've got to start enforcing the Sherman Antitrust Act and start breaking up big companies again, like Richard Nixon initiated with AT&T. And thus provide space in the business ecosystem for small businesses and medium-sized businesses, for entrepreneurs. And you've got to have a national trade policy that puts America first. So, we're not going in those directions, but there's a little step. Now, in the meantime, we've got a corporate tax rate of 35%, and the Republicans are running around screaming all the time, oh my God, we got the highest corporate tax rate in the developed world, which is true. Or it's actually the second highest. But nobody pays 35%. Corporations on average in the United States pay 11%. That's what's called the effective corporate income tax rate, 11%. So let's drop it down to 28% and close some of these loopholes so that GE and Apple and ExxonMobil who paid not one penny in income taxes for the last half a dozen years, will begin paying taxes. And here's President Obama talking about doing that.
Interest tax breaks. Right now, everybody knows this. Our tax code is so riddled with loopholes and special interest tax breaks that a lot of companies who are doing the right thing and investing in America pay 35% in their taxes. Corporations who've got fancy accountants and stash their money overseas, they pay little or nothing in taxes. That's not fair. And it's not good for the economy here. So, I'm willing to simplify our tax code, closes those loopholes, ends incentives to ship jobs overseas, lowers the rate for businesses that are creating jobs right here in America, provides tax incentives for manufacturers that bring jobs home to the United States. Let's simplify taxes for small business owners, give them incentives to invest so they can spend less time filling out complicated forms, more time expanding and hiring. I'm willing to do all that should help businesses and help them grow. But if we're going to give businesses a better deal, then we're also going to have to give workers a better deal too.
There you go. And then he talks about let's take some of this money and use it for infrastructure and things like that, because he actually is talking about increasing the revenue coming into the federal government, just like Jack Kennedy did. When Jack Kennedy, Kennedy actually proposed it in 1962, in 1963 in his State of the Union address. In 1963, he gave several speeches. Probably the most famous was to the Commercial Club of New York, as I recall, the Commerce Club of New York, whatever, and their Economic Club. And he didn't live to see it. LBJ passed it in 1964, but it dropped the top tax rate from 91% down to 70%, and in the process closed so many loopholes that rich people like Jack Kennedy actually started paying taxes. And you saw federal revenues, federal tax collections go from in the neighborhood of $60 billion from the income tax on rich people, go from in the neighborhood of $60 billion in 64 to over $150 billion by the end of that decade, just 6 years later. So it worked. It wasn't the tax cut. It was the closing of it, because nobody was paying those top rates. It was the closing of loopholes. So then Reagan came along and said, well, gee, the tax cut worked. Let's do it again. Oh, that didn't work so well. 15 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So if Obama can pull off a Jack Kennedy, I'll be genuinely impressed. We'll see. I think these Republicans won't even go along with that.